Welcome to EnglishPass Podcast, brought to you from our local studio in Calgary. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we're diving into an exciting topic: managing a classroom. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate learner, in this podcast, we're helping you level up your English listening and reading skills. And before we get started, let me tell you that the sponsor of this episode is TypeFit, keyboard typing practice and learning service. Today, we're exploring something really interesting: managing a classroom. This is an insightful subject for English learners because it covers a lot of practical vocabulary and real-world situations. So, let's dive right in. Managing a classroom is much more than simply keeping order or making sure students stay quiet during a lecture. It is the complex art of creating a community where learning can happen without constant interruption. Many people think classroom management is just about punishing bad behavior, but that is a common misconception. In reality, effective management is proactive, which means acting in advance to deal with an expected change or difficulty. If a teacher is only reacting to problems after they happen, they have already lost a great deal of teaching time. Instead, a successful educator must build a foundation of trust, structure, and clear expectations from the very first minute of the school year. One of the most important concepts in this field is rapport, which is a friendly and harmonious relationship where people understand each other's feelings and ideas. Without rapport, even the best rules will fail. Students are much more likely to follow the guidance of someone they respect and who they believe cares about their success. Think about a teacher named Mr. Silva. On the first day of school, he does not just give a long list of things students are forbidden to do. Instead, he asks his students what kind of environment they need to feel safe and successful. They work together to create a class contract. This is a real-world example of shared accountability, which is when everyone in a group takes responsibility for their actions and the well-being of the group. When students help make the rules, they feel a sense of ownership over the classroom. Looking back at history, the way we manage classrooms has changed drastically over the last century. In the early 1900s, many schools used corporal punishment, or physical discipline, to keep students in line. The focus was on fear and total obedience. Teachers were seen as authoritarian figures who should never be questioned. However, modern educational psychology has shown us that fear actually blocks the brain's ability to learn. Today, the focus has shifted toward positive reinforcement and social-emotional learning. We now understand that a student who is acting out might be dealing with stress at home, a learning disability, or simply a lack of social skills. The teacher's job is now seen as being a mentor and a manager of energy rather than just a person who hands out punishments. The physical layout of the room is another key element that acts as a silent teacher. Have you ever considered how the position of a desk can change how a student feels? In a classroom where desks are in long, straight rows facing the front, the message is clear. Look at the teacher and listen quietly. This is excellent for a lecture, but terrible for group work. Consider an example where a teacher named Miss Chen uses pods, which are small groups of 4 desks pushed together. This encourages collaboration and discussion. However, Miss Chen knows that this layout makes it easier for students to talk when they should be listening. To manage this, she uses a specific routine. When she rings a small bell, every student must stop talking and put their hands on their heads. This transition, or movement from one activity to another is handled quickly because the routine was practiced dozens of times in the first week of school. Another concrete example of effective management is the 2-extend strategy. This is often used for students who are particularly difficult to reach. The teacher spends 2 minutes a day for 10 days in a row talking to that specific student about anything except schoolwork. They might talk about the student's favorite video games, their pets, or their weekend plans. By the end of the 10 days, the teacher has built enough rapport that the student is much more likely to cooperate during lessons. This shows that management is often about the individual connection rather than just the whole group. And it reminds us that every student is a person with a life outside the classroom walls. Many new teachers struggle with the concept of the productive hum. They often think that a perfectly quiet room is a perfectly managed room. But is that always true? If students are working on a science experiment or a group project, there should be noise. This productive hum is the sound of students negotiating, asking questions, and solving problems together. The teacher's role here is to circulate, which means to move around the room constantly. By moving through the space, the teacher can provide scaffolding, which is the temporary support given to a student to help them complete a task they cannot yet do alone. When a teacher circulates, they are also using proximity to manage behavior. If two students are starting to argue, simply having the teacher stand near them, or proximity, is often enough to remind them to stay on task without the teacher ever having to say a word. Consistency is perhaps the most difficult but essential part of the job. If a teacher has a rule against using phones, but lets one student use theirs because they are usually good, the teacher has just undermined their own authority. Students have a very strong sense of fairness. If they see that the rules change depending on the teacher's mood or the student's popularity, they will stop respecting the boundaries. For example, imagine a teacher named Mr. Jackson who uses a parking lot for phones. Every student puts their phone in a numbered pocket by the door when they walk in. Because he applies this rule to everyone every single day without exception, there is never an argument. It simply becomes part of the culture of the room. In some cultures, classroom management looks very different. In collectivist cultures, such as those in many parts of Asia or Africa, there is often a much higher emphasis on the group's harmony. Students might feel a deep responsibility not to embarrass their family or their peers. In more individualist cultures, like in the United States or much of Europe, management often focuses on individual choices and consequences. A teacher working in a diverse city must be aware of these cultural notes. For instance, in some cultures, making direct eye contact with an authority figure is a sign of disrespect, while in others, looking away is seen as a sign of guilt. A teacher who does not understand this nuance might accidentally escalate a small problem into a big one by misinterpreting a student's body language. What happens when things go wrong? Even the best managed classrooms have moments of chaos. This is where de-escalation comes in. When a student is angry or upset, the worst thing a teacher can do is get angry back. This creates a power struggle where nobody wins. Instead, a teacher might use a cool-down corner, a quiet space with a few books or sensory tools where a student can go for 5 minutes to regain their composure. This is not a punishment, but a tool for self-regulation. By giving the student space, the teacher prevents a small disruption from stopping the entire lesson. Effective management also involves the way instructions are given. If a teacher gives 5 different directions at once, students will get confused and start talking to each other to figure out what to do. Clear management means giving one instruction at a time. This is often called chunking. For example, instead of saying, "Get out your books, turn to page 40, answer the questions, and then put your papers in the bin," a teacher should say, "Please get out your books and turn to page 40. They wait for everyone to do it, and then they give the next step. This keeps the energy of the room focused and calm. Finally, we must consider the role of technology. In the modern world, a laptop or a tablet is a window to the entire world and a huge distraction. Managing a classroom today requires a teacher to be a digital manager as well. They might use software that allows them to see every student's screen, or they might have a simple rule like screens at 45 degrees when the teacher is talking, meaning the laptops are half closed so students can still see the teacher. These small, concrete actions are what keep a classroom running smoothly. It is a constant process of observing, adjusting, and reflecting. A teacher's work is never truly done because every group of students is different, and what worked perfectly last year might not work at all this year. The key is to remain flexible, stay calm, and always remember that the goal of management is not to control the students, but to empower them to learn. And that's all for today's episode of EnglishPass Podcast. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to practice what you've learned and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we improve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time. Let me remind you that the sponsor of the episode is TypeFit, and I suggest to check the link at the description. I'm Samantha, and I'm excited to be your host for many more fascinating episodes to come. Until then, keep learning and keep growing. Goodbye.